It's been called the season of declarations. You have people declaring to run for president, to run for governor, to run for, seats in federal and state houses of assembly. So, yes, it's understandable. It is that season. But yes, it is a season. But beyond that, we need to also know what to look out for. We need to arm Nigerians with what to exactly look out for so we can select the right people in this leadership recruitment process. And to talk about that this morning, help us steer in the right direction is Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, who is Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. He joins us live from our Abuja studio this morning. Thank you, Dr. Ikechukwu, for joining us on the program. Well, I'd like to start off from the conversation we had just before, coming to you. And it's about the strike. And I just want to get your thoughts on this. There's been a lot of back and forth between ASU and the federal government since decades ago. Is it now fair? Do you think it's moral? It's morally right and fair to go about, declaring, go about preparing for, the elections and the politicking when our students have been home for over 9 weeks? Is that moral in your perspective?
From my perspective, I see nothing legally or morally wrong with that, for a simple reason. You have the academic calendar, you have the political calendar, you have the electoral calendar. So we need not bring the world to an end because somebody was remiss in one aspect of our national life. The truth of the matter is that the university system has been limping for a long time. Remember, I used to teach in the university. So the ASU federal government problem is not new. It's always been there. It was there before the dawn of this our democracy. It's still there as we speak. So I'd like to state very clearly that the national electoral calendar does not have to suffer because there's, if you like, aggravated misconduct by either one or both gentlemen, following from your last discussion, who are involved in the dispute. But the point I'd like to make strictly regarding ASU is that the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, if you look at its history, it was part of the, if you like, instrumentalities put in place to ensure that funding of tertiary education will no longer be a problem to the country. And consistently, if we want to really be honest about this, my view is that government has not always played the role it should play after each round of discussions and agreements with ASU. And it's not about the Buhari regime. And I ask myself, if you recall, during the COVID period, I think the nation spent something in excess of 200 billion on school feeding children who, as far as I could tell, at least given the children I know, they were at home in their parents' houses. So if you look at it, the government has consistently been able to respond to national emergencies running into hundreds of billions over what it's quarreling with ASU. So my suspicion is that it is possible to intervene and end the impasse with ASU, but that for some reasons which are not clear to me, that has not happened. So question of suspending elections, no. The next chairman is in office to do a job. All institutions of state cannot shut down, but the real misfortune is that the Federal Republic of Nigeria is playing with its human capital factory. The only factory in existence that generates capacities for creating citizens and for development. It's not good. And move from ASU, which other organization is not on strike at the moment? So it is a leadership problem and not just a question of whether ASU is being of good behavior or not. But I'll add the caveat and insist that this problem is not new, and it will point more to an elite attitude to scholarship, learning, development, and education than to any particular government's disposition towards ASU today. It predates the last 20, 25 years, so let's be real.
So, Doctor, well, this is not about stopping elections or postponing elections, but this is about, you've said that we've had emergency situations in the country, and some would say this is equally an emergency situation, having a strike for up to 10 weeks. And I wonder then, what is the point of all this if you, as you said, that human capital factory is moribund? Then who are we electing the leaders for? Who's going to be electing the leaders? Isn't it just papering over cracks when we have major problems, but we seem to be playing the ostrich. Isn't this an emergency situation enough?
It's more than an emergency. It's actually, it's gone beyond an emergency. It's more of a catastrophe when you think of the consequences already arising from the mistakes made. So I'm actually on the same page with you. The point I was making in my initial observation is that if the nation can respond to emergencies, running into hundreds of billions sometimes, at short notice, if the government could spend how much on to build rail lines to Mali, the economic value of which is open to argument, the Federal Republic of Nigeria has capacity to meet the demands of ASU 4 times over. And my issue is, I do not understand why that is not happening. The facts are on the table across several fronts. The IPPIS issue about, irregular, fluctuating figures in payments. If your agreement says you're retiring at 65 and you have a platform that says once you're 50 or 55 or less than 65, you're retired. If you're migrated to that platform, of course, you lose relevance. You stop. It's a whole, catalog of misfortunes. We are joking with what we need not joke with. Education is a primary national priority. The university system has responsibility for producing the highest quality of human capital in terms of capacities to drive the rest of the country. You can speak of other levels of education, but the university system is different. Now, people are being forced, like you observed in your earlier comments, to look for alternatives, and I think that's something else we should also wake up to, so that we don't think it's only the universities, particularly public universities, now offer degrees. But coming around to the issue on which I say I'm on the same page with you, the ASU matter, the disagreement with our lecturers, is not something, don't declare a state of emergency, please. We've been hearing such, with all due respect, nonsense. Don't declare a state of emergency, solve the problem. Let the universities get back to work. Let the students be in school instead of picking up anti-citizen development skills because they are idle. So not emergency, please. Get the problem solved. That's what's of interest to me.
Well, the rail line being built to Niger, some would wonder if the capacity could have been created from the universities in Nigeria as opposed to having to import the brains that needed to do it. It is the same university that one would have expected would prepare leaders, electable leaders into office. I don't know what your take would be on that. Do you think the universities are being utilized? You used a very instructive word the other time. Is the factory, the education system is the factory that produces the nation's human capital. One then begins to wonder if the factory is not as efficient or effective as it ought to be. Where then, or how promising is it for us to employ the right set of people in the coming general elections?
No. The factory has been dysfunctional for a long time, and we should not carry on as if it's just the university system. The factory has several components, beginning with the nursery level. This whole problem has been on for a very long time, for several decades. Beginning at the nursery level, who are the teachers in nursery school? In most of them, they're either secondary school dropouts or house girls. At the secondary level, that's nursery. At the primary level, what's the quality of teachers? Secondary level. Then you come to the university, and with all due respect to my former colleagues in the university, if you go to the universities today, you'll find that most of them are unable to retain their best graduating students, which really is the primary academic feedstock for scholars. So, in many cases, third-rate scholars get in, produce fourth-rate materials, and you find grammatical blunders at various levels of the academic ladder that you would not have tolerated at the first-year level back then. Now, the factory is dysfunctional. It's not only the university that produces human capital, let's be real. It's a certain level of elite human capital, engineering, among other disciplines. And then you have others, you have vocational training. But the point I'm making about the university system is this. The values people pick up from being students, they no longer have enough chance to pick up those values because they are mostly either at home on the streets, and even when at home, their parents cannot monitor them. So, yeah, it will not be, without the university being in place, that's not what will prevent people from voting in elections, because there's also a level of education and literacy about citizenship that may not be part of the academic content of what you study in the university. So that's why I keep insisting on disaggregating the two. The university system needs to get back to work.
But Prof, the question that I raised about the leadership recruitment system and the elections is, I mean, one would have expected that the people to be employed in the next elections, the people to be elected into office, would have a measure of resources from the same university system, the education system. They should have been educated at the university level to be able to produce the kind of results that we want. You just referenced it in a way, third-class lecturers producing fourth-class brains. So is that to say that we do not have enough capacity? What kind of leadership, how optimistic are you that the next set of leaders we will produce in 2023 will be able to at least take us a little further than where we are now?
I think the next set of leaders would be leaders who left the university system very likely at least 30, 35 years ago, most of them, certainly not less than 25. So it wasn't exactly the same kind of problem they faced. But my concern would be for it to be individuals who know what needs to be done at the level of the economy, at the level of education, at the level of citizenship, at the level of national security. So I'll still separate the two, and my reason is simple. If you talk about the students, are they really being trained? I will present an even more complicated problem. Can you remember that probably in the last 25, if not 30 years, there's no year the National Association of Nigerian Students has not had at least 2 presidents, that have not had factions, and that most of them are people who graduated long ago. In fact, in the case of, I think, 18 months ago, they said the aspiring president was 43 years of age. 43. That's somebody who is dangerously close to becoming a grandfather. And when you call a meeting of the stakeholders of ASU, you find people who graduated when Adam was still behaving well in the garden. And they're passing themselves off as youth. So at that level of leadership recruitment, the platforms for student leadership nurturing and maturing has been taken over by politicians and middle-aged men and women who deploy them for political purposes. You go and look at the national youth movement, the same problem is there. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the presidents? What's the average age across the board? When you do that disaggregation and evaluation, what hits you is that it's not that, the universities need to be in place in order to produce those who will vote in the next election. Sorry. Those to vote in the next elections and those to contest in that election were produced long before now. Whatever mischief, whatever misconduct, or whatever goodness they are going to bring on the table is already imbibed. And if you look at the candidates on the table, you can see that all of them desire to be president. Some of them are contestants. Some of them are participants. But the presumed objective is to do well for Nigerians, for Nigeria and Nigerians. Now, the issue for us as citizens is to make clear-eyed decisions. Itemize our problems. These are the problems we see. Okay, we don't think John can do it. We think Musa can do it. We don't think Andrew can do it. We think it's Bio. Those are the kind of decisions. What template are they putting on the table for rescuing Nigeria? I hear talk about, the best thing is to win it. First of all, put somebody who will win election. You can talk about competence later. Fantastic. Your car just broke down on the road. You need somebody who can fix it. They say, no, please don't go and talk about competent mechanic. Go and look for somebody people like. You have surgery, appendix, you have appendicectomy. No, you see, people don't like this man. He's always wearing a blue shirt. This other one is very popular with the gate men. Go and take him into the theater to operate on you. That's what they're recommending for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is absolute insanity. Problems are solved by people who are competent and who know how to solve them. Leadership is a problem-solving platform. You need knowledge, you need clear solutions, not just proposed solutions, but implementable solutions that show also your knowledge of the operating environment. They're saying we should overlook all of that, get somebody to win an election, and then think of competence later. Fine. Carry me into the theater. Open me up. Give somebody a knife because people like him in the hospital. He's a brain surgeon, I'm pregnant. He doesn't know where the uterus is. He cuts my chest. He said, no, you know, he was, that's, I think if we bring it down like that, the absurdity of some of the proposals on the table will become clear. There are people who have no business near the boys' quarter of leadership in Nigeria, and they are prancing around, actually taking themselves seriously to be voted for. To do what? If you vote me in today to command Boko Haram, anti-Boko Haram forces, I'm not a trained soldier, I wouldn't know what to do. But you're saying, no, 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 he's popular. The people like him. All over, Nigerians like him, so make him head of command. Why do we use soldiers for war and not shoemakers? Why don't we get a medical doctor to fix your shoe? Why would he bow before a shoemaker and say, fix my shoe, and not argue with him? It's because he has knowledge. It's because he's competent. It's because he understands what to do. It's because he knows the raw materials to use, and he knows the result to expect. Somebody who takes a position for which he is not qualified is the greatest danger to any nation that wants to take itself seriously.
Well, Doc, you know, when you put it like that, it makes it all sound like, you know, people will be asking, so how am I going to make my choice? So from this perspective that you've taken this issue now, do you think the electorate, the people who do the voting most of the time, have this understanding communicated to them? But maybe before we talk about the electorate, the followers, the political parties are the ones who throw up the candidates. There are many aspirants, just as you have said now. And there are those who will be wondering, at what point do we interrogate their intentions, their plans, before they are thrown up for popularity as opposed to competence?
Now, they're, what did you say we are testing? They've already been tested, my dear brother. Many of them have held office either as governors. They've held one position or the other in the last 10, 15 years. Check the record of performance. Check the record of performance. That is all. So to pretend that there's this template that will need to come from the moon for us to assess them, no. You work on Channels Television. We watch you every day. If we're now looking for people to anchor maybe a national debate, and somebody mentions your name, I'll be one of the first to raise my hand. Oh, those two guys at Channels. Yes, yes, yes. From their record and from how they handle issues, they are more than articulate and they can take any question impromptu and all of that. Now, that is your record of performance.
But is
somebody has been governor. How did he govern? Those
Doc,
are the issues to raise.
Doc,
Sorry.
Is that it's perfect, and I mean, thank you for the word, but is that
I was coming to
understood?
the second leg about educating the people.
Yes.
No, no. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned. Is it understood? The answer is no. And the question then is, why is it not understood? It's not understood because of the catastrophic failure of all the political parties. The business of political parties is to educate the population to share a certain ideology so that on the basis of it, they vote. So after 22 years, members of your party do not know that what you need for leadership is competence. That's not INEC's fault. That's not the fault of the National Assembly. That's the fault of political parties that have failed to invest in political education, that have consistently only become political just before elections, that are rumored to give out money and on the basis of it pick up votes, so they have no real members based on ideological loyalty. To that extent, to say that the best thing is to vote is actually to pass a vote of no confidence on all the parties. And to say that in the last 22 years, none of them took the trouble to educate anybody about what it takes to hold public office is a disastrous judgment on 20 years of experiment in democracy. So 2 points. On the question of evaluation, we have enough material with which to evaluate all the candidates. They've been around here for 20 years. So you don't need to set up a panel to look at anything. Their records are there. You know, then at the level of, you know, Nigerians don't know that. That's the failure of political leadership. Now, between now and the elections, let them then struggle to see if they can reverse the narrative they've been dealing with and argue competence, and then show that they have competent people in their parties. To refuse to advance that argument is actually to do further disservice to the Nigerian citizen, to the Nigerian state, and to democracy. So that would be my position on that. They should wake up. Political parties are not small gangs for cornering Aso Rock and dealing with national resources. Political parties are platforms for developing nations.
It's been quite an interesting
case, I mean,
pardon me, it's been quite an interesting conversation, but we're coasting home in about a minute or so. But I'd like you to even simplify this further. Because some people will look at CVs and they see, okay, this person has attended 7 schools. And they're like, okay, it's good enough. But they might not look and see, oh, the person had maybe a 3rd class, dropped out of 1, and all that. So let's simplify this further. If we're looking 20, 10, or 30 years into the past to see their, antecedents, what should people be looking for particularly? What kind of achievement or otherwise should people, the electorate, be looking out for?
Service delivery. You don't need a 1st class to serve your community well. 1st class in most cases may be proof of literacy, academic competence, etc. You may not have enough emotional intelligence. This person has been in a public space. What has he done for the people? What has he done? How does he carry on? Is he living like an emperor? Is he accessible? The projects he carried out, are they projects that impacted the lives of people, or what you call legacy projects? You come to my town, probably we're a fishing community. We need electricity, we need clean water, we need to fish. We need electricity so that we don't sell off our fish every morning. We use the oven on it. And you come and build us a town hall, and you put it as part of your achievement. That is scandalous. Or I'm a governor, I tell you I've made a lot of investment in education. Like the incident, I think, in Kebbi State, about between 5 and 7 months ago. They invested over 4 billion on building new primary schools, I think, in every ward. Fantastic. They say it's investment in education. I disagree. It's investment in education infrastructure. Nobody passes exams because you have new classrooms. How much did you invest in teachers? In the last 4 years, how many children have you been sending to WAEC for WASC? Is it true that consistently it's been less than 300 for a state? Not a school. Where you find most schools sending over 100. So these are the issues to raise. Okay. Not CV as per the schools you went to. No, it's important you're literate, but it's also important that you show capacity to govern across the right indices.
Let's say maybe, let's just say maybe this is part 1 of the series we're having with you. So let's end here. Hopefully have this conversation, this very interesting one, another time. But I'd like to thank you so much.
I don't know what happens to your time whenever I come to the studio.
Honestly, it just flies, right?
I'll press charges.
We'll see to that. But I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, who is Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you, as always, for your time on the program.
My pleasure.